Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our very first ERAS Finance webinar. My name is Estelle Greens. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a fourth-year medical student at the Penn State School of Medicine in the University Park curriculum located in the Happy Valley of State College, Pennsylvania. And I am serving as one of the co-directors for FuturePedsRes this year.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Catherine Geico. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm currently a fourth-year medical student at the Virginia College of Osteopathic Medicine in Blacksburg, Virginia. And I am also serving as one of your co-directors of FuturePedsRes this year. Before we continue, we'd like to take a quick second to acknowledge our APPD faculty advisor, Dr. Michael Dell, Colleen Hughes, who serves as the Associate Executive Director for APPD, and Rachel Thompson, our ComSec faculty advisor. These individuals have helped us tremendously, and we're very thankful, as well as Denise Cruz, our FPR Associate Director of Webinars, working very hard behind the scenes tonight.
We are also pleased to introduce the representatives from the AAP section on pediatric trainees and helping hands of USMLE, namely Han Do, Julie Raymond, Britt Nagy, and Purvi Agrawal. They have also helped make tonight a possibility tonight, and we're very grateful for them.
It is now our pleasure to introduce you all to our Associate Director of Research, Dr. Alex Aguirre. He is a graduate from Universidad San Francisco de Quito in Ecuador.
And thank you, Catherine, for that lovely introduction. Now let's dive into our goal and agenda for tonight. The objective of this webinar will be to provide insight into managing expenses, specifically pertaining to the costs associated with the application cycle. We understand these concerns can compound to the stress associated with ERAS and rotations, and we hope to alleviate some of the mental strains with our discussions. First, I will give a presentation on ERAS finance. During this presentation, we will ask a set of poll questions that we kindly ask you to answer. This will allow us to conduct an economic analysis to create awareness of the expenses for the application cycle. Afterwards, we will be joined by a panel of residents to share advice and answer your much anticipated questions. We have prepared 4 questions for the panelists. Then we will take questions from the audience. Okay, let's begin. So here we have a chart showing the fees per number of programs per specialty that you may apply to. The application fees increase proportionally based on the number of programs that you choose. Here we have an example if you decide to apply to 23 pediatrics programs. In this case, you'll have to pay $99 for the 10 first programs, plus $19 for each of the next 10 programs. And finally, $23 for each of the last 3 programs, giving us a total of $358. Here goes our first poll. Thank you so much for your answers. All right. Now here's an example of how the application fees works if you decide to apply to more than one specialty during the application cycle. In this case, 7 Med-Peds programs besides the 23 pediatrics programs that we already calculated. Since we are only applying to 7 programs, the fee will be $99. However, if you decide to apply to more than 10 programs in a second specialty, you have to calculate the application fees for the second specialty as we did initially. For example, if you decide to apply to 23 pediatrics programs and 21 Med-Peds programs, In this case, you'll have to pay $358 for the 23 pediatrics programs and $99 for the 10 first Med Peds programs, plus $19 for each of the next 10 programs. And finally, $23 for each of the last 2 programs, giving us a total of $693. Now we have our second poll of the night. That is awesome. Thank you. We appreciate your responses. Okay. Also, you will have to consider additional fees which are assessed once per season, either the USMLE transcript or the COMLEX transcript for $80 each. As we will see later, some DO applicants will have to pay for both in some cases, accounting for $160. It is important to also consider the NRMP ID fee as well, which is $70. This ID is not a requirement to submit your ERAS application, but it is suggested to have it before and to submit your rank order list. The Association of American Medical Colleges has created an Excel document for you to modify with your data, so these processes can be easier. Here you have a QR code for you to download it. For more information regarding taxes, please visit AAMC website, which is linked below. If someone wants to calculate their fees right now, we can do it. If not, we can move to the next slide. All right. Before we begin, we have our third poll. Thank you so much for your answers. Awesome. Now, this slide should be used as a guide to identify and plan for future expenses for incoming applicants. As you can see, this slide shows different types of expenses related to MD, DO, and IMG med schools. IMGs should take into consideration that there is an international fee for USMLE Step 1 and then Step 2 in case you take the exam outside the US. For information regarding Prometric Centers, which is the place where you take those exams, please visit the Prometric website. There you should be able to learn if your country has a Prometric Center to plan your future expenses in advance. Last but not least, you should consider other expenses pertaining to prerequisites to apply, such as the ECFMG registration, pathway approval, certification, and token, as well as some other expenses, such as clinical rotations, which of course are not included in the IMG curriculum, but are truly necessary to apply for a residency program. Additionally, as we said before, some DO Med students will have to take USMLE exams in order to be able to apply to some programs. Now we have our fourth and fifth poll of the night. Thank you for your responses. Okay. Now, here we have a world map, including the minimum wage per month for the majority of countries expressed in US dollars. As you can see, there is a vast range of salaries around the world. One of the lowest minimum wages per month in the world ranges from 0.71 cents to almost $4 in Sudan and Syria, respectively. Of course, these salaries are proportionally adequate in some way to the expenses of those countries. However, you can imagine the economic burden for an applicant of those countries. Excellent. Finally, here we have some resources so you can learn and plan ahead how to save money and learn about investing, financial plans, and loans. You can scan the QR code to visit each of these 5 resources. It is now time to meet our wonderful pediatric residency panel for tonight's event. Thank you all for being here. And let me present you the lovely residents that are joining us tonight. Dr. Kevin Brickman, Dr. Kendall Ridgway, Dr. John Pesella, and Dr. Khushbu Sahab. Without further ado, let's get started with our Q&A portion of tonight's webinar. Panelists, we encourage you to provide any insights, and you're welcome to engage with attendees in the Zoom chat if you wish to. Let's begin with the first discussion. How many programs did you apply to? How did you arrive at that number? If a program has a history of not accepting IMGs or DOs, would it be worthwhile to apply to those programs, or would it be wise to save the money? Any of the residents can begin.
Sure, I can start. Hey, I'm John. I'm one of the third years at Cincinnati. I was looking back at this because I couldn't remember, and I think it was 20 for me, which is, obviously there's a broad range. I had a fairly competitive application, so that was probably sufficient, if not even a little bit more so for pediatrics. I actually mostly arrived at that number by a tool that used to be on the AAMC website that I honestly can't find anymore, that was in this sort of Apply Smart page that actually, based on your step scores and certain other characteristics of your application, gave you sort of a percentile of likelihood of matching based on those different features, and then how many programs you would apply to in order to kind of have that higher chance of matching. I was looking earlier today, and maybe someone else knows or has used that more recently, but I don't see it on the website anymore. But that was, I think, a great resource. I'd say in the absence of that, one of the best ways to kind of get a sense of where you land, I was looking through some of the other resources this morning. The Residency Explorer tool is a very good one. You can actually look at each program and see what the typical sort of characteristics of the matched applicants are, and kind of get a sense sort of qualitatively how you stand up against them. And then I would say the NRMP data is another great source, just kind of seeing more holistically kind of what a higher tier or mid-tier or lower tier PEDS applicant typically looks like, and how many applications they're typically submitting, and what features of their application. You can kind of break all that data down on the NRMP matching data website, which they have for really a long time, many years of data. So that would be some of the sources that I would recommend. I can't speak too much to the IMGs or DOs as I'm an MD graduate. I would assume if you're in the spot where you're just trying to, give yourself the best chance, it's probably still worthwhile to apply. But that would be my rough take on that particular question. But I'd be curious to hear what other people have to say.
I can answer the second part of the question since I'm an IMG. So I had a very different number than John. I applied to around, I guess, 140 programs, which included both the child neurology and pediatric programs. So since my primary program that I wanted to match at was child neurology. And as for until last year, there wasn't much data in the Residency Explorer website regarding the percentage of the match rate in different child neurology programs. And I was just checking the data. I was just checking the number of programs. So I guess it's increased to 79. When I applied, it was 72. So there's a rough number that we take as an IMG. I don't know how we came across. I guess it's dependent on the match data that we have, but it's like 10% of the programs that you apply to other programs that give you interviews, and you end up having interviews. So actually, it kind of corresponded to the number of programs I had. I ended up having 16 interviews out of the around close to 150 programs that I applied to, out of which there were just 30 pediatric programs, and the rest of them were child neurology programs. So to answer the second part of the question as to if it's worthwhile applying to such programs who do not have a history of accepting IMGs. So again, depends on what database are you using to kind of get to the point as to whether they are accepting IMGs or DOs. I would caution you to be dependent on just Residency Explorer as the yardstick to measure as to how many IMGs or DOs have been taken, because I would urge you to go to the website of the program that you are checking and see over the course of the past 5 years what is the percentage of non-US IMGs. Sometimes they do take US IMGs and non-US IMGs, and people who are not citizens but do have a green card as IMGs as well. And this has happened multiple times in multiple programs where I've got the discrepancy. So I would really urge, if it's a dedicated list and it's your primary program and you're applying to more than one program, to go to the websites and check how many IMGs particularly are there who are not US IMGs and who are not it's kind of difficult to see if they are green card holders and not exactly US MDs. But if you check the medical college that they are coming from, it would also give you some insight, because there are certain medical colleges which have a partnership with the US medical colleges and the residency programs. So they have a history of accepting residents or graduates from that medical college. So if that is happening, it's pretty obvious that the new non-US IMG percentage is coming up from that number of residents that have applied from that particular medical college. So these are the intricacies of what sort of residents were selected over the course of years that you need to pay attention to before making the diagnosis, whether it's IMG friendly or it's not IMG friendly. And again, so for me, I excluded the programs on the West Coast because they'd never had the history of taking IMGs, and I saved my money. There were certain programs which had maybe like one IMG in the past 5 years of a child neurology program and 2 IMGs. Again, it depends on your financial situation as to how many programs you have to apply more than that. How strong you feel your application is dependent on the kind of research publications, your experiences, and your scores cut off. And everybody has the kind of the idea as to what their application is. If it's an average application and you feel this is definitely a competitive program, then I would maybe take the decision of not applying there. But if I do feel my application is above average, they've had at least 2 IMGs in the past 5 years, even if it wasn't from my country or the neighboring countries, or maybe it was just like pure non-US IMGs, I would end up applying to them. So that is how I made the decision. There's no algorithm as to how to come to this decision. It's very labor intensive. And I did notice that this year, Residency Explorer is not giving you it doesn't show you where you stand on the program profile, whether you're on the 25th percentile, the 50th percentile, the 75th percentile, based on your application, based on your scores, your research experiences, and your volunteer experiences. So it kind of makes it harder this year to see where you stand. But again, if you do your research well about the programs, you look at the past history of residents, and you look at their requirements in finer text, it would give you a general idea as to if the program accepts IMGs or not.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Brigman, do you have any other insights?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that awesome amount, mostly because, so as a military resident, I've had a little bit of a different experience. I may not be as helpful as some of the other panel members. I applied through the military system. It's not ERAS. We have a slightly different copy of our own. I ended up applying to 4 programs, I want to say, and I arrived at that number because that's the number of pediatrics programs in the military. Usually, if you've gotten to the end of medical school, you know if you're applying military or civilian, and it's not as common to apply as a blend, though some people do. I am more than happy to talk to anyone who has any questions about applying to military residencies. Like I said, if you've gotten to the end of medical school, you're usually already doing a kind of track that sets you up to be applying to medical residencies. If there's anyone that's here who's already on that track with HPSP or USIS, I'm more than happy to talk to them about the process. And if there's anybody who says, hey, I just did 4 years of non-military medical school and I'm interested in the military residency, from what I know, there are technically ways to do that. It's a little bit less common. As far as IMGs versus DOs, DOs and MDs are treated pretty similarly in the application process, from what I understand. So if anybody wants me to get them in contact with somebody who might know how to do that, that's absolutely something. I've seen less IMGs in military residency programs. I don't know if that is any sort of bias in the application process or just because it comes with a lot of paperwork and is a less common way to go about it. I would say that if somebody is finishing 4 years of a normal civilian medical school and is thinking about applying to a military residency, given that it's less common to do it without having any sort of prior engagement with the military or already having started on the track at the start of medical school, I wouldn't do it on a whim just because it's like a very complex, weird process. It's not as common. But if you've decided that it's something you really want to do, the application is free. But I'd have to get you in contact with somebody who knows how to do the exception policy bit for the application, all that good stuff.
Thank you so much. I just learned that Dr. Ridgway is running a little bit late, so we'll invite her later to answer these questions. I'm gonna pull up the last poll before we begin our discussion. Awesome, thank you so much. So, how did you pay for your applications? Did you get a new credit card or did you take advantage of any offers for this pending? What's your opinion about this? We can begin as we did before with Dr. Pesela first.
Guess I've now volunteered myself to be first on all the questions. No, that's fine. I just paid for by credit card. I think that's what most people do. I would say if you're going to be spending thousands of dollars to apply, like if you're in IMG or just applying really broadly, it would probably be worthwhile to look at some of the credit card offers, because most of the time they're usually like a $4,000 spending like for the first 3 months. And if you're already going to spend like $3,000 in a month, that would probably be a great way to earn like a ton of points. There's a lot of good cards out there. The Chase Sapphire is a good one. There's lots of other good ones as well. So if you're going to spend that much money, I think it's very worthwhile to think about getting one of those credit card offers for sure. That would be my general opinion. As I did not spend that much, I just kind of used what credit card I had. But if I was going to do it again and spend that much, I would definitely think about looking into those for sure.
Dr. Saha.
Yes, so I did not get a new credit card, honestly, because I wasn't permitted to get a new credit card. I did not have the visa for that until then, until getting into residency. So what I did was, while I was applying for my, this is something that I figured out retrospectively. I did not think about it prospectively. So it's a nice trick that people can do. So if you're traveling from, even if you're not traveling to the US, I would suggest getting a Forex card and transferring the dedicated amount into your Forex card at a time when you have a low dollar conversion rate. So I transferred my money when the dollar conversion rate was around 72. And after that, 72 was the conversion rate for INR and USD. And then after that, the rates rose to as high as 83. So I ended up saving a lot of money, because every time you are applying from another country to for the ERAS, you will undergo the conversion rate, and the conversion rate depends on the market rate. So I ended up saving a lot of money because I had already transferred that amount to my Forex card, and I used my Forex card to pay for the ERAS application. Now, the only advice of caution would be to look into the kind of Forex card that you're taking from your own home country bank, because some banks do charge you a conversion rate which is over and above a certain value of expenditure in 1 month. So if you have a good credit history in your own country, and if you are using a certain bank to use the credit card, it would not cost you as much. But I have found out from my friends that they have been charged extra 12% from their spending over the conversion rate of around 3%, which is usually charged. So that is something that I definitely did end up doing, and it saved me a lot of money. And about financing my application, so this was definitely a very huge financial burden, but this is all like, it depends on your preparation. Be prepared, but that the day that the year of your ERAS application is the year that you would require a lot of funds. Since I was doing my observerships and my externships during that year, I had already allocated that fund to spend during that time. So it kind of helped me take care of the spendings. And as much as you can save on other aspects like sharing accommodations and just cutting down on the luxury that you have while you're rotating and doing those observerships as an IMG, so that you can just save the money, and because your ERAS is going to take a lot of your money. So that was something that I did. Yeah.
Thank you. And finally, Dr. Pinkman.
So like I mentioned before, if you're applying military, it's all free. And so that kind of took care of the financial aspect of that. For military members that applied through the ERAS, I believe I did hear of one of my colleagues who did that for anesthesia, did take out a credit card. I unfortunately cannot add much past that.
That is perfect. That is your experience, and that is amazing. Thank you. We can move to the third question. Do you have any tips for saving money now that you are on the other side of the picture?
Is this as it relates to application, or are you guys referring more towards once you've matched in residency kind of thing?
It will be a great idea to explore first the application cycle. And if you have any tips afterwards, it will be amazing as well.
Well, I'm sure. I think Dr. Saha has already referred to some excellent ones for sure, but I'm a huge proponent of budgeting generally. So I would definitely recommend thinking about using some sort of budgeting application. There's a lot of great ones. Some are free, some are not free. The ones I use one called You Need a Budget, which has a monthly or has a yearly cost associated with it, but there's lots of free ones as well. And I'll try and find a link and send that, as I've been trying to do that throughout. But generally, I think budgeting is a huge thing. If you anticipate you're going to spend, hundreds to thousands of dollars, you probably want to plan ahead for that expense. And obviously, we're only in, well, I don't know, you guys' applications are due soon, but you've presumably known about this for a little bit. So hopefully you've saved a little bit of money. But if you haven't, definitely trying to do that at this point. or take out, additional loans. Although if you can avoid doing that, obviously that would be ideal. But definitely, I think using some sort of budgeting application and thinking about what the cost is going to look for you using one of those calculators would be hugely helpful for sure.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saha.
I guess that's the most important advice that you can start with. Definitely, once you start collecting the data that how much you're spending and in what ways are you spending, will you be able to save the money that is being spent otherwise? So some few tricks and tips that I took care of as an IMG, especially when I was trying to finance myself. Reach out and network extensively. So when you're applying for your observerships, not just reach out for just clinical experiences, but reach out to your existing seniors. They really helped me find accommodations which were not just cheap and affordable, but sometimes they would end up, I could just end up staying at their place for an entire month in that rotation. So that really helped me save out on the most, huge costs of accommodation that cost you the most. And since I chose to give my interviews partly from staying in US and then coming back to my country, accommodation was a big chunk of my expenses. I also reached out through Twitter to a lot of people, and we ended up sharing a lot of accommodation. So it's a trick which you can contact your Airbnb host owners and try to ask them if they would be okay in having you share the accommodation with somebody else. And again, sometimes some owners they do not really advertise the fact upfront on their Airbnb sites, but sometimes if you contact the owners, they might be able to give you a lesser charge, and they might be able to help you out if you tell them about your circumstances. And I have received some advantage their ways. I ended up paying my accommodation in cash, and that kind of saved the transaction conversion money, because every time I was paying, I had some cash, so I paid the money by cash, and since it was an upfront payment to the Airbnb owners, they also kind of gave me a discount which was not listed on the site. So there's just a trick that I used. The other one I would say, try to find. So I extensively looked for clinical experiences in and around the cities which had a good public transportation, so I would not require much money to be spent on cabs and just traveling around. So again, pick up your accommodation that is somehow closer to your hospital as much as possible, and where as much as you can use your public transportation. So that's a good way of exploring the city and knowing how comfortable you are going around the city. But again, if that's not an option, then carpooling is another way, trying to get together. There's no shame in admitting that you are in an applicant position, and a financial crunch is always there. So there's no shame in admitting that, the fact that I don't have enough money and I would be cutting on costs, which means saying no to different get-togethers, saying no to social situations as much as you can, which involves a lot of expenditure. That's fine. So talk to the residents, be upfront about it. There are so many residents who are willing. When I was in a lot of observerships, the residents came up to me and they helped me out by taking me across to the grocery stores and just like helping with the carpooling and stuff. So everybody's willing to help you, but you would have to not feel shameful about the fact that you are trying to save money, because it definitely is a lot of expenditure coming from somewhere outside of US and trying to finance your entire journey, because the money just does not end. The expenditure does not end with ERAS. There are a lot of expenditure that comes even afterwards, and even after the match, until you receive your first paycheck, which just goes into the drain, taking care of all the other expenditures. So that would be something that I did, and I would advise all the applicants who are from a similar situation.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Brinkman.
For saving money in residency, I absolutely agree with John in the budgeting aspect. I know that I was not very good about it in medical school and started to be more intentional about it in residency, and it made more of a difference than I expected. Another one, it seems like likely most people in the audience are already on top of this based on the subjects we've had, but I was a bit of a goof in medical school and waited till later to get credit cards. Initially, I was very much like one of those people who was like, I'm not going to spend money that I don't have. I'm going to stick with debit cards. But getting a credit card in late medical school was immensely helpful. If you get one or two high quality ones and you just stick to those, just through all the traveling with applications and visiting programs, you rack up points very quickly. And then if you're diligent about paying them off appropriately every single month, you don't really accrue any of the downsides, and you're able to take all those points that you get while traveling and save money on the next 2 or 3 trips you have to do when going to interview.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We can move to the last discussion. Do you have any financial experiences that you would like to share, either related to the ERAS application cycle or to the beginning of your residency programs?
This is a very big question, and one that I love talking about personal finance things, so I won't bore everyone with the entire topic, but generally speaking, I would say 4th year is an excellent time to start, if you haven't already, your personal finance education. It's not given to us. Maybe it was given to you guys in your medical schools. You're very lucky. It was definitely not given to me. I don't think it's provided to most people. So I would definitely try and spend time as you're thinking about some of this during ERAS, and then before you start residency, think about what resources can I use to educate myself to start off on the best foot possible when I actually start making money. So some of those resources that you'll hear everyone talk about that I still think are very good are things like the White Coat Investor. Those books are excellent. His podcast provides a lot of great information. I would probably start with the books because the podcast kind of gets more technical at times. There's a ton of resources for student loan subjects. I'll try and share some of those links after I'm done talking as well. And then really anything that you can find from reputable people, whether they're physicians or whether they're people in the personal finance field with actual credentials, like a certified financial professional or a certified financial analyst, CFP or CFA. And think about whether or not you would want to utilize any of those people, even in residency. Most people don't, but probably later on in your career. So I would say, just generally speaking, 4th year is a good time to try and spend some of that time to educate yourself before you start making money, so you can make those good decisions from day one as it relates to budgeting, as it relates to investing, as it relates to getting all your insurance in line. I would say that's really one of the biggest things that I recommend to everyone. And it's something that I think has been hugely helpful to me, having now made those things automatic after, the first year or 2 of residency, and hopefully just for the rest of my career as well. So that's my general advice there.
Thank you so much. Dr. Sahab.
Yeah, I feel as an IMG, I honestly did not have a lot of financial education to begin with, and I was honestly whatever my parents were doing, I was just trying to tag along. But definitely, as you come from another country, you need to be aware of the taxations, how the taxations are going to be when you have your own accounts in the country of origin. And now that you're having your account here, you do get the advantage of saving taxes for the first 2 years on a G1 visa, which is an established fact. I just got to know about it recently. So do be aware of filing those claims and getting your money back as much as you can. The second would be, again, it all starts with collecting data, just knowing where you're spending, how you're spending. In my first years of during my residency, a great way of saving money was the money that I would have otherwise spent on just putting furnitures in the house and just like the usual stuff. Facebook Marketplace was a good place. Reaching out to residents, since I was coming here, a lot of residents were just like giving stuff for free. So I took that and I was able to finance my entire furniture and everything for free. So that is something that I really did save money from. So just be aware of all these places and resources that you are getting, which could help you save excess costs, again, because you're trying to recuperate from the from the expenditure that you've had from your previous years of applying for USMLE altogether. It's okay to not be able to save a lot during your couple of first year of your residency. That's something that a lot of people have highlighted, that they're not able to save that much because you're trying to build your credit score, you're trying to send money back home, you're trying to save all of that. So it's fine if you're able to allocate some funds to your savings and trying to cut down on your expenditure accordingly. The other thing I liked doing was having some sort of investment technique back in my country, because that is something that goes on and provides you a lot of tax benefits as well. And you can monitor that even if you're in the States. So because you're on a visa, so there are a lot of investment options are limited, especially if you're here. So doing that back in your country is a little easier than doing it here. And there are many apps that I can share the links with that you guys could use, which have a very small fee when it comes to conversion. If you're sending money back home, or if you're trying to send money to your parent country account. So those apps have been helpful, and they kind of give you an advantage, especially if you're sending a certain amount back home. So it all starts with having a basic knowledge and just trying to put together your finances together and having a budgeting tool to make sure what you're spending, where you're spending.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And finally, Dr. Brinkman.
I definitely want to second John's point of the white coat investor. I found that really helpful early in residency. It really wonderfully covers military medicine as well as non-military medicine as a topic. And it's a really good book on tape, even though you miss out on some of the things that you could flip back to in the physical book if you got it. Outside of that, keeping in mind if you're moving anywhere for a residency, like was mentioned before, it's usually people, residents, staff, things like that, who are used to people coming through, renting for a couple of years and then leaving. So there's often already cheaper housing options already in place that people in the program might contribute to. So getting in contact with residents and asking, hey, does anyone have a property that they rent cheaper to other residents or that staff are renting, can be an easier way to find the housing aspect.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now we will open up the floor for a live Q&A. It seems that we have one question here. What are aspects of the ERAS worth splurging on versus saving money on?
I can take this question because I got this question a lot from the applicants who are applying. So they were asking me if they would, if it's worthwhile spending money on agencies which help you with your PS, with your application formatting, as well as just guiding you throughout the process. I would absolutely advise you against that, because there are a lot of free resources, a lot of residents, a lot of enthusiastic attendings and residents who are out there, who are from the IMG community, who are more than willing to help you out in the process. So I would say definitely save money from using paid resources that help you out with your application season, because that is something that you can get for free. And I have personally helped a lot of my applicants and a lot of my friends who are applying this year by going through their PS and their ERAS application, and I'm more than willing to do that. So just that is a big way of just not spending too much. The other thing would be what I was not able to do is something that I would advise others to do, is a thorough program research. So the biggest way of just cutting down on your expenses would be doing a well-read research as to which programs are conducive to taking IMGs and which are not. And that helps you save the $25 that you're applying, especially if you're applying to more than one specialty. Since I applied a little, I was in a time crunch, I wasn't able to do that much research. I ended up applying to more programs than I had to. So I ended up spending a little bit more. Take the the virtual open houses that happen, especially in a program which doesn't have a history of taking IMGs, and they are focusing on the fact that they're trying to take IMGs this year, take that with a grain of salt, because I individually came across a lot of programs which said the same, but did not end up taking any IMGs, even if they interviewed the IMGs. So for them, they have the blanket statement for IMGs, which is US IMGs, green card holders again. So you don't really get to know if it's actually a non-US IMG that gets to interview in that program. So those are just like some ways to take care of your money and save the money that you can end up spending. So there are a lot of areas where they kind of just lure you to spend a lot of money, especially when it comes to observerships and externships. Again, doing a thorough research, talking to as many people as possible, and Twitter is a really great place, and we have a lot of other resources which are absolutely free and which help you guide you through the process. Utilizing them over paying somebody to do the same thing would be very, very highly advisable.
Thank you so much. Dr. Pasella, Dr. Brigman, do you have any other insights?
I don't think I have much to add on that one.
Okay, thank you. We have another question here. I was just wondering if you have recommendations for how to break down what percentage of your apps should go to target programs versus reach programs. For example, if you apply to 30 programs, how many of those will you suggest be reaches so you're not spending too much on those programs?
Not that there's any perfect number per se. And I might not be able to speak to this the best, but at least we'll try. I mean, to me, like something conservative, like 2/3 to 1/3 or 75 to 25, something like that seems pretty reasonable if you're trying to keep things relatively confined as far as the number of programs you're applying to and the cost you're trying to keep things down to. That's what I would think about. I don't know that I thought about it as consciously. I think it's an excellent question, but I'd be curious if anyone else have other thoughts.
Unfortunately, not a lot I can add, since our spread is so thin.
Yeah, so I feel again, it's very there are very interesting I've come across a lot of interesting instances where I know a lot of people have interviewed at programs where there was a very low percentage of IMG intake, and they stood by the fact that they would not end up being selected at the programs. So even though sometimes a lot of the programs would interview you, and you might be interviewed at programs which do not really take IMGs, just to show it in the statistics that there is a fair amount of IMGs that they take for the purpose of diversity. But again, I would caution you, again, since there's not much insight into how many from an IMG perspective, how many programs would actually end up looking at your application versus how many would be giving you the interview versus how many would end up actually selecting you. And especially in a program like child neurology, we did not have enough data. It's hard to answer that question. I don't know if doing a thorough research of the programs from the sites or online research would help you. But again, the answer to that would be quite limited.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pasella, Dr. Brigman, and Dr. Saha, for your insights tonight and for all your advice. We are so grateful for your support, PEDS applicants, and taking time out of your busy schedule to participate in our very first ERAS Finance webinar. We have more information regarding the military match in the chat. Additionally, Dr. Noel Moulter kindly share some info with us, which will be available in the chat. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions. And if we don't have any other questions regarding this topic, we can finish the session. Good luck to all applicants this match season, and thank you.